The Discontented Ghost, Chapter 8. For several days I stayed out, rethinking my strategy. For one thing, I decided that from then on I would deny them the famous blood stain. None of the Otises had shown any aesthetic appreciation of it, and that detergent freak would not let it alone. So they could just jolly well do without. There were my duties to be considered, of course. Every ghost is expected to do his duty, and I was not one to neglect mine, but don't think it was easy. On Wednesday night, I crept up to the large oriel window for my bi-weekly gibber, and twice was sent sprawling over strings stretched across dark passageways. Then on Saturday night, having waited till the wee hours to attempt a quick and stealthy tour of the corridors, I stepped out of my room and soared off the top step of the back staircase like a ski jumper off the slide at Innsbruck, except that mine was a butter slide. It was all I could do to rise and limp slowly up the stairs to my bedchamber. All this added fuel to the fire, of course. I was again laid up for several days, and I don't know when I might have recovered had it not been for a special ointment Lady Eleanor brewed up for me. Some mixture of eye of newt, toe of frog, wool of bat, tongue of dog, and other salubrious ingredients from an old recipe. Ellie, those rotten kids are getting too close for comfort, I fretted as she rubbed ointment on my battered limbs one evening. That butter slide shows they're hot on my trail. It's only a question of time till they fathom the secret of my door. The next thing I know, they'll be paying me midnight visits. In fact, I've been doing a lot of thinking lying here, and I'm beginning to see where I went wrong. I overplayed my hand. I tried to take on the whole Otis clan at once, instead of picking them off one at a time. Rather than spread myself thin, what I've got to do is concentrate on my worst enemies. You mean the twins? Who else? One at a time? In their case, I'll try for two, and this time I intend to go all out, no holds barred. Simon, you don't mean... Yes. Not yes. Reckless Rupert, or the Headless Earl. She gasped. Simon, do you think that is wise? Remember what it did to Lady Barbara Modish, and she was an Englishwoman who was used to apparitions. What if those boys perish from fright? A thing like that could be very bad for Anglo-American relations, and just now we need their trade. Well, that's just too bad. Our Reverend Prime Minister, Mr. Gladstone, will have to straighten things out best he can. Besides, I'm not worried about that. I may reduce the twins to a pair of drooling imbeciles, but as far as their perishing from anything this side of the final trump is concerned, I am sure they are indestructible. The four horsemen of the apocalypse themselves would find their hands full with these two. Well, all right, Simon. If your mind is made up, we'll do it. But I hate to think of the job we've got ahead of us. It will take a good 3 hours to get you into that costume. If a thing is worth doing, it's worth doing well, I countered. You'll see. It'll be worth every minute we spend on it. It was more than 70 years since I had last appeared in my most celebrated disguise and given Babs Modish such a fright, so our task was every bit as difficult and time-consuming as Lady Eleanor had anticipated. I had to hunt everywhere for the big leather riding boots, and when I found them they seemed a trifle large. I think I must have put the wrong boot trees in these the last time I packed them away. What's more, I can only find one of the horse pistols, I said, rummaging through an old steamer trunk. I'm positive I put them both in here when I... Simon, why don't you take an inventory of your things? Scolded Lady Eleanor. I've told you again and again. I know, but never mind that now. I can make do with one pistol. Can't hold them both and the head as well anyway. On the whole, I was well pleased with my appearance, especially once I had added Reckless Rupert's head. Oscar was under the impression that it was not included among my accessories. Why, it was the crowning touch of my costume. Well, no, crowning is hardly the right word, to be sure, but tucked under my arm with eyes ablaze and tongue slavering from open mouth, while my own head was concealed beneath the bloody stub of a neck. Rupert's head was a sort of satirical accent that captures attention. All in all, I felt complete confidence as I trod the boards that night. The midnight hour found me stalking down the upstairs corridor toward the blue bed chamber, which was the one occupied by my prey. There, to make my errand all the easier, I found the door standing slightly ajar. With a dramatic gesture, I flung it open and stepped inside. Stifled shrieks from the four-poster bed, shrieks of laughter, reached my horrified ears at the same instant. A heavy jug of water plummeted down on me, wetting me to the skin and giving poor Rupert's head a soaking equaled only by the Duke of Clarence's when he was drowned head first in a butt of Malmsey, which, of course, made the thing slippery, hard to hold on to, especially for a ghost who was already as upset and distraught as I was. The result was that I raced down the corridor, clawing open the shirtwaist in front of my eyes in order to see better where I was going. His lordship's head slipped from under my arm like a fumbled football and went rolling away down the corridor, just when I was planning to vanish into the wainscoting. As I stopped and watched, it hooked around a corner and went bumping away down a flight of stairs. Uttering a curse I won't sully your ears with, I turned to pursue it, leaving a trail of puddles with every step I took. After a few strides, I cast one of those oversized riding boots like a horse casting a shoe. It went flying to one side and nearly smashed a marble bust of Cato the Elder. I could not leave it behind, so I had to stop and retrieve it, and then, with riding boot in one hand, horse pistol in the other, I hop-skipped along the corridor, rushed down the stairs 2 at a time. When I reached the broad hallway at the bottom, the head was nowhere to be seen. It had vanished. I peered under a massive old bookcase that stood against a wall, but apart from dust and cobwebs, there's nothing beneath it. Before I could search further, the patter of little feet in the corridors above sent a new chill through my already chilled frame. The monsters were coming. With a final curse, I rose and vanished through the wainscoting, retreated to my room with a new worry piled atop all my others. Where was the beastly? By the time Lady Eleanor arrived with chicken soup, I was already in bed and sneezing. I heard the commotion, she said, putting the bowl on my night table and setting herself to minister. What happened this time? I gave her a moving account of this latest atrocity. As she listened, the corners of her mouth began to twitch, and finally she threw back her head and laughed till she had to wipe away the tears. Oh, Simon, to think you'd fall for that one. Oh, those twins. If they ever do want to break into the poltergeist field, I shall certainly put in a good word for them. I glared at her helplessly. You may laugh all you wish, but I was soaked to the ectoplasm and my costume is ruined. Look at it. It will take a century to get it put right again, even if we send it out. Oh, don't be silly. She examined the rumpled heap of finery on the floor. I'll take care of it. Very well, but you haven't heard all. There's worse to come. I lost my head. It certainly sounds like it. No, Goose. I mean reckless Rupert's head. I can assure you that wiped the smile from the minx's face. In the midst of preparing to transfer soup into me, she paused, transfixed, and gazed at me wide-eyed. The headless Earl's head? Yes. Oh, really, Simon? How could you be so careless? You try carrying a wet head under your arm, and you won't be so critical. Do you have any idea how heavy your average head is? It weighs a ton, and reckless Rupert's is bigger than average. He took a size 8 1/4 hat, in the days when he was still taking hats. But Simon, where did you lose it? I described the circumstances. When I got down there, it was simply nowhere to be seen. I looked under the bookcase, but it wasn't there. Incidentally, you better go after those housemaids of yours. They're loafing on the job. I was in a frame of mind where any petty opportunity to criticize was welcome. They haven't swept under there in ages. Oh, for pity's sake, Simon. Well, you're supposed to be the housekeeper, I muttered in a sulky voice, and returned to more pressing matters. I didn't have a chance to look round any further, because at that instant I heard the twins coming. If ever they find that head, no, I'll not think of it. They'll probably bowl it over the lawn, or paint mustaches on it. I put nothing past them. Let's hope they don't know you dropped it, and won't go looking for it. We can only hope. Then a new cloud smudged my fevered brow. But what if one of your housemaids, more conscientious than the others, decides the hallway could use a good redding out, and suppose she starts poking round in all the nooks and crannies of the place, and suppose she comes across something she hadn't expected to find, staring up at her? They'll hear her shrieks in the next county. Lady Eleanor rose and paced the floor nervously. Well, I wish I could take a look, because if that conscientious housemaid you mentioned, Bridget is her name, the wall-eyed one with the horse face? That's right. If Bridget ever saw a thing like that... Yes, but what do you mean? You wish you could take a look? Can't you go right now? She shook her head. Against the code. No menial task allowed between the witching hour and cockscrow. No, Simon. I'm afraid that cold or no cold, you'll have to go back down there before the housemaids show up and find that thing. It wasn't fair. It wasn't fair at all. But that's the way things are in our business. She made me finish the soup and then left with a parting injunction. Don't be long now. Slip on some dry things and get going.